Hi everyone, welcome back to Growing Up in Scientology. So today we have part 2 of Dining with SPs with me and Mark Bunker. These videos are a lot of fun. Mark and I are going to keep doing these at different bars, restaurants, and cafes in downtown Clearwater to sort of highlight that there are some fantastic places to go where everyone is welcome. If I am welcome there and Mark Bunker is welcome there, anyone is welcome there. And we really are trying to get as many people to come back to downtown Clearwater as possible. And this is just kind of a fun little way to contribute to that effort. So these videos are being posted originally on Mark's channel, which is Wise Beard Man. If you just search Mark Bunker or Wise Beard Man, you'll find it no problem. So even if you're watching this video on my channel, I definitely encourage you to go over to the Wise Beard Man channel and subscribe to that channel and watch these videos over there first. And also, I would encourage everyone to consider supporting Mark's work on Patreon. Again, you can look it up just under Mark Bunker or Wise Beard Man, and you'll find his Patreon page, no problem. And I'll post the link to it in the description down below. All right, that's all I've got for the intro. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Mark Bunker, and this is Aaron Smith-Levin, and this is Dining with the SPs. And where are we today?
This is the Pour Yours Wine Bar. This is right on Cleveland Street near Cleveland and Fort Harrison. You give them your credit card, they give you this little key card. They've got 3 different wine dispensers here with about 6 or 7 wines in each dispenser case. And you just put your card in and you select which wine you want and you select how much wine you want. Voila. They've got a great variety. They also have food here. So it's a great place. It's a great place to hang out. Cheers. It's dog friendly.
Really?
Yeah, you know, the whole dog friendly issue is something that makes Dunedin a very popular place for people to go downtown because almost all of those restaurants are set up to be able to bring your dogs in. Right? Bring your dogs in, hang out on the patio and do whatever. You can, we bring Goliath here. He sits right here on the bench with me.
That's some dog.
Yes.
That is a gigantic dog.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dunedin. There's a new property going up in Dunedin that's got some people talking.
There is. We've got some stuff happening locally. So we're in Clearwater. Dunedin is the next town to the north. And there's a developer, a Scientologist developer from Mexico. His name's Moy Agami. The Agami family is pretty well known in Scientology. Moy is my age, so he's like one of the sons of the family. He's also got a twin brother. And I actually know him. I know him from, actually working with him on course. Moy and his family are the ones who developed the condo tower that Tom Cruise has a unit in. And Moy, with one of his partners, bought a whole bunch of these properties right here a couple months back. So obviously the community gets very nervous when they see Scientologists buying property. Yeah. I'm not sure that concern is justified. It's very easy for people to confuse a Scientologist buying property with the Church of Scientology buying property. Right. And it's funny. It's a funny reaction I get sometimes when I tell people they don't have a reason to be concerned about certain things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get a reaction of, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't tell people not to be concerned because we want people to not let their guard down. And I agree with not letting your guard down, but I also agree with only being concerned about the right things. And the truth is, if the church wanted to buy a property, the church would buy a property. They do not need Moy Agami to buy a property for them, right? And, Moy is motivated by profit. It's a private enterprise. And Scientology is not looking to open up business in Dunedin.
But, when they want to open up an org, church doesn't use its own money.
Well, when they want to open an org,
to buy the property, it's the parishioners who have to raise the money to do that.
So that is true, but let's look at it this way. We have a couple beautiful dogs here. So when they do that, they do raise the money from the parishioners. But when it comes to buy the building, the church buys the building. They don't do it under the public's name.
Oh,
yeah.
No.
And so one of the things one of the levels of detail that I wanted to get into to explain why people really shouldn't be that concerned about what's happening in Dunedin. And by the way, there's 2 reasons people are concerned. One, they do not want a giant condo tower in front of their existing single-family homes.
Yes.
That's understandable. You're not going to hear me telling people not to get worked up about that. What they shouldn't be concerned about is that it happens to be a Scientologist running the project. I said, look, Scientologists are not looking for an excuse to move to Dunedin. The Scientologist would rather live right here in Clearwater because Flag is right here in Clearwater. There was a huge condo tower 1 or 2 blocks down called Station Square. I challenge anyone to look up the occupancy rate or the foreclosure rate of that condo tower as proof Scientologists are not looking for an excuse to move to Dunedin. There are plenty of open, available condos for sale right here in downtown Clearwater, which is where Scientologists really would rather be living. And if they can't fill up this relatively new condo tower a block and a half from Flag, they're not looking for an excuse to move 3 miles down the street in Dunedin. I guarantee you. You know where the church owns those 3 little motels up in North Fort Harrison? Mm-hmm. This plot of land is like a stone's throw from those motels. It's right on the intersection of Sunset Point and North Fort Harrison on the water. So it's very easy to assume that if the church owns those motels right there, that they could be behind this as well. And it's just not true. And maybe people just don't care. They don't want the project to happen anyway, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to address the concept of Moy's involvement versus the church's involvement.
One thing I saw that the city stopped, there was an old firehouse that hasn't been used, and there was some talk about turning it into a brewery. Mm-hmm. And Scientology made an offer on that. Yeah. And the city turned it down.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I thought that was really good news. I thought that was a really good look for the city. I thought it was another great example to show that the city has the capacity and the will to tell Scientology no.
It's not the first time. Just recently with the relocation of the aquarium, they were going to bring that downtown, and Scientology loved that. And,
that's right.
And the city stood their ground. And
that's right. And actually, that was something that I think that subject was covered in one of the episodes of Scientology in the Aftermath. Yeah. And the way that episode was edited, it ended up looking like it was the aquarium solely who had stood up to the church. And the truth is, it actually took the city standing with the aquarium. Because here's why. The church wanted the aquarium to sell them this property. Yeah. Right? But they were already under contract with the city. So the church took a 2-pronged approach. They tried to threaten both the aquarium and the city. Right? So the city could have backed out. And the aquarium could have backed out. And both of them absolutely refused to back out of their contract. So I believe that property sold for about $4 million that the city paid to buy from the aquarium. The church was offering $15 million. Yeah. Right? Now the aquarium's a nonprofit. Right? So the aquarium said no to the church's $15 million and instead took the city's $4 million. But the city, actually, if you recall, the church had done a whole presentation to the city council and said to the city, if you back out of this contract, we will give you millions and millions of dollars to fully renovate all of the storefronts on Cleveland Avenue. We will build this huge movie entertainment complex with Tom Cruise over here in Clearwater. They did everything they could to incentivize the city to back out. And the city said, we're not backing out. We want this property more than we want your money. And I thought the city didn't get all of the credit that it should have got, just in the way that episode ended up being edited. I'm sure it wasn't even intentional. Right. So that's when I saw them do this thing with the firehouse. I was like, right on, showing that they can do it again.
It seems like there's been this fluctuation in how the politicians here react to Scientology. Mm-hmm. Of course, when Gabe Casares was the mayor, when Scientology snuck him down, the city was pretty proactive in saying, we've got to do something about this. All the covert operations that were done against Gabe, the attempted takeover of the city, the Clearwater Sun, putting all these OSA spies in everywhere was pretty shocking at the time. And over the years, it seems like the politicians have kind of forgotten the history of the church. And sometimes it's maddening to see how far they have closed their eyes to what's actually going on here in the city. So it's good to see them actually put their foot down once in a while.
Yeah.
You mentioned the editing on that episode of Scientology and the Aftermath. What about the more recent two-parter on Clearwater that Leah did? It seemed like the police were not at all happy about the section of the show where I went and sat in a park, and 4 police cars were called to the scene.
Right.
It looks like the police got a lot of guff from the public with that.
They sure did.
Can you tell me a little bit about the police department and the chief's reaction to that?
Absolutely. You know, when people say that the Clearwater PD are in the pocket of the church, my reaction to that tends to be a little defensive, because I know a lot of the Clearwater PD, and I know a lot of the detectives, and everyone I know in the CWPD would probably privately tell you they're huge fans of the show, and they're sick of being used as pawns, as public pawns, by the church. You know, I'm not going to name names, obviously, but I'm just telling you, this is, I'm speaking from my personal experience and from my heart on this.
Sure.
And so, I'll tell you one thing that happened in the show that I thought was widely misunderstood. When the police officers came up to you and they already had a copy of your injunction in their hands,
Yeah.
I saw the reaction on Twitter and on Facebook, and a very common reaction was, "Oh my God, you're telling me these police officers walk around with a copy of a 20-year-old injunction? They obviously work for Scientology."
Yeah.
Well, that's not a logical conclusion, is it?
No.
How did they get a copy of that injunction?
Well, because they got a call from Scientology, and they went and talked to the Scientologist who called them to make the complaint, and they were handed the injunction.
Of course.
And told how dangerous I was, and you know the whole buildup becomes, you shouldn't be here. You got to arrest him. He's breaking the injunction. This is clearly put in place, and the police aren't looking at the details in the injunction. It specifically says you can't picket at certain spots.
Yeah.
And we weren't anywhere near those spots, and no one was picketing.
Yeah.
So, but the police just get an injunction and go, well, there's his name in it. Mark Bunker is right there. I guess we got to do something about this.
Right.
It's just a tool that Scientology has been able to use for 20 years, not just against me, but against anybody who decides they want to protest Scientology.
Right.
People that I've never met, people who had nothing to do with the injunction. Years later, that injunction was pulled out for anyone that Scientology wanted to silence. And it does put the police department in a rough spot. I have to say, though, when I first moved back here to Clearwater in, I think, 2013, I'm not sure if we talked about this the last time, but I had rented a condo, and my neighbor was a Scientologist. And when she found out that I was a lousy, stinking SP, she told Scientology, and Scientology used that petition to try to get me evicted. And they were serious about it. The head of the condo association told me he was getting threatening calls from the lawyers. They got a copy of the injunction and all these legal threats saying that I got to be evicted. And the condo president said, no, we did a background check. He's fine. After that, attorney Dennis DeFleming, who was in that Scientology and the Aftermath program with me, he and I went to visit with the police department. We sat down with then the chief of police, who's a different chief than the one we have right now, and the city or police department attorney was there, and there were a whole bunch of people. And we went in hoping to get the police department support in having the injunction dissolved. And when we got there, we were surprised to find out that Scientology had been in there 15 minutes before we got there and had their own meeting. And the police told us, we're happy. We like the injunction. we want to keep it in place because it's keeping everything quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little surprising.
So there was no success at that
No,
time
the police-
getting any recourse.
Right. The police, we were hoping would side with us in court so we could just go before the judge and the police could say, there's no need for this anymore.
Right.
After the episodes that were shown on Leah's show a few months ago, the police changed their mind.
That's awesome.
Apparently there was enough feedback from the public and the police were on defensive that they called Dennis DeFlamme and said, we're happy with the injunction going away now, which is great.
Is that right?
Yeah, which is wonderful, except I can't afford to fight it right now.
And so they're basically telling you, hey, if you bring it back to court, we're going to help you with
Right.
this, but you can't bring it back to court.
Right.
At that point.
Yeah, they said we'd support you. We'll go into court and we'll say there's no need for it. But
So they can't unilaterally just throw it out. They need it to go to court.
Apparently it needs to go to court.
Okay. Interesting.
Right. The court would have to dissolve it. But what they have done is pretty much over the course of many years now, even before I moved back here, the police have realized that they're being used by Scientology.
Yes.
So they have allowed other people to protest.
Yes.
So it's kind of a toothless thing, but Scientology still will use it every opportunity they can.
They sure will.
Because they don't care if the police have said, this is...
Yeah. I mean, they will take it as far as they can.
Yeah.
So just to make sure I totally get it.
Yeah.
The Clearwater Police originated a phone call to your lawyer after the show saying,
Yes.
hey, if you guys bring this back to court, we will side with you in asking this injunction to be thrown out.
That was my understanding, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the unfortunate thing here, though. Until that is officially thrown out, let's say you and I would decide to do our next little meet and greet on the bench in that park down the street, and they call the police. The police aren't allowed to say, we're going to ignore this injunction because we don't agree with them anymore. Like, they need that thing to be thrown out if they, or Scientology can force them to enforce it, can't they?
Right. Well, we can't sit on the bench because the bench is on their part of the sidewalk. They own that park bench. We can stand on the sidewalk.
So the injunction
in front of the
applies
park.
to you. Does the injunction apply to me?
It applies, not the injunction itself, but I'm sure
Just private property.
if you were, it's the way it's written, anyone acting in concert with me. So you would, this guy's acting in concert with me, I think you'd have to agree. Look, we're sitting here making a video, and he wants to sit on a park bench owned by Scientology.
I'm going to test it. I'm going to test it out. I'm going to bring the dog down there. You know that park is vacant 100% of the time.
Yes.
Nobody goes in that park.
No. There is 0.5% of the time one winter wonderland.
There you go.
But basically, yeah, it's
Yeah. Okay, interesting. That's good news about the injunction, though. So, to revisit the statement I made, if I get a little defensive when people give the police a hard time about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I asked Mike Render for his thoughts on this. I said, damn, it's a shame that people literally think the police are in Scientology's pocket. And after this conversation with Mike, I sort of saw it a different way. I said, people were outraged. The outrage was correct, even though it was for the wrong reason. And here's what I mean by that. Here's what Mike pointed out to me.
Yeah.
He said, look, the public at large see that episode, and it's very easy to conclude that the police are behaving the way they are, meaning giving Scientology special treatment, because of some financial consideration.
Right.
And the fact is, the police are giving Scientology special treatment, but it's not because of a financial consideration. It's because of fear.
Yeah.
And he said, the net result is the same. The police treating Scientology with kid gloves because they're afraid of them has the same net effect as treating them with kid gloves because they're in their pocket.
Yeah.
And it's just as inappropriate for the police to be afraid of these guys as it is for them to be in their pocket. And if the result of all of this is that the police realize they need to be better informed and educated on who they're dealing with and how these people operate and what their motivations are, then we've accomplished something.
The police used to be educated.
That's right.
I mean, one of the things that that Ray Emmons told me, Ray was in charge of the Scientology investigation, the time from when Scientology snuck into town through the mid-90s, when the city shut the investigation down. During that period, in 1995, Captain Paul Mazer of the police department wrote an affidavit because Scientology was suing the city, wanting them to disclose the names of the undercover officers who were part of the investigation of Scientology. Wow. So Captain Mazer wrote an affidavit saying, no, we do not want to disclose these officers' names because Scientology has a policy of fair game. And laid out the, you can be tricked, sued, lied to, or destroyed by any means, by any Scientologist, without repercussions to the Scientologist. That and all sorts of other things were laid out by the police department in this affidavit. Ray Emmons trained young recruits on what Scientology was, how they behaved. Nothing has really changed over the years, except now these new recruits don't hear about it. It's not to say that they're in the pocket, but I know that one thing that the police were unhappy with back in 2000 was when I made that short documentary called Scientology and the Clearwater Police, which I thought clearly showed some bias against us by officers who were being employed in their off-duty hours by Scientology. Now, did I think that they were corrupt in doing that? No, but I think there was a corruption that came from the fact that these people who were employed by Scientology were more likely to take the easy route and if Scientology complained about something,
Right.
try to shut us down.
Yeah.
And it was most blatant in the hammer attack.
I saw that.
There were a couple German filmmakers who had come to town. They were shooting a documentary for German TV. And they're going to interview a German artist who was a Scientologist, even though he was denying he was a Scientologist. And they asked me to go along with the camera as a backup for them. So we started to leave, and a guy with a hammer comes up behind me, starts cursing, and hits the camera cover.
What if I smash that fucker for you? Oh, I'll smash it. You better go. I called the cops. Get the fuck out of here.
Is this?
Get the fuck out of here.
On the public?
Yeah, well, guess what? I'm on the public property too. You wanna start some shit with me?
Hey.
The police show up at the scene. The police officer is told about this incident and the fact that I had it on tape. He could watch it. But he looked at me and said, you work downtown with Bob Minton, don't you? I said, yes. And, all right, get out your IDs. He refused to look at the video I had shot. It took 3 other officers, including eventually a sergeant, who arrived on the scene who actually looked at the video.
The sergeant ordered Officer Kelly to do an investigation, yet Officer Kelly refused to even ask this man for an ID. If he had, he would have discovered that on this day, Richard Bernard gave the police a phony name, a phony birth date, and a phony social security number.
Well, the Church of Scientology said, I have no idea who this guy is.
Oh, really?
And then we looked through the Scientology publications and saw that he had taken a bunch of courses.
Right.
So we told that to the police, and then they went, oh, okay. And then they went back a couple of days later and actually got the guy's ID to see that he lied about this.
Right.
And it's like, really?
Right.
Now,
I remember watching that video, and one of the most frustrating parts of that video is when you're telling the police officer, he swung at me with a hammer, and the police officer goes, well, did he swing at you or did he swing at your camera? and you're like, well, is it really much different?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, he's just going to say he swung at the camera.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, make him say it. You don't have to say it for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there were a lot of instances like that where you think, okay, I mean, it's not the biggest tragedy in the world that has happened, but you can see how it's much easier to just shut us down
Yes.
than to actually consider what Scientology is really doing and how they behave.
Right.
And how easy it is for an organization like that to try to influence, because that's all they do is they try to influence. They're trying to safe point Scientology.
Correct.
But anyway, I did think the police reaction to the aftermath show. One other thing. Back when that tape came, before I put the Clearwater and the police department on the internet, I'd given a copy to Ray Emmons to look at. He took it home. Apparently, he shared it with somebody in the police department. Because I found out that before I'd even published it, the chief had gathered all the officers together and watched the video.
Is that right?
They were not happy about the video.
So you mentioned Ray Emmons. Just to remind us, what was Ray's position?
Well, Ray was a detective in the Clearwater Police Department. And he was, I think, one of two people in charge of investigating Scientology.
Oh, okay.
Gathering all this information about them for decades.
Okay.
And I think you can still find the Ray Emmons files online to see some of what he had gathered.
So is it true that when Ray was around
Yeah.
and in the force, when new officers would join the force, they would receive or participate in an educational component with Ray about basically educating them, schooling
Yes.
them on what the Church of Scientology is, who they are, and how they operate?
Right. Right.
Now, I've been told, and if Sergeant Slaughter has made a mistake, unintentionally, I believe it is the following. I've been told that when Sergeant Slaughter took over, for whatever reason, he got rid of that educational component. I can't say why. I don't believe in any way it was because he's in the pocket of the church. I consider Sergeant Slaughter to be a local ally. I don't have any animus against Sergeant Slaughter.
Right.
I do believe that when he took over as chief, some organizational change was made. There was no longer any educational component delivered to new officers about the Church of Scientology, its history, their policies, what fair game means, that Sea Org members are kind of trained to lie to the authorities, this kind of thing. And I'm mentioning this because, and I'm sorry, I think you have something you want to say, but
No, go ahead.
okay. On Scientology in the Aftermath, one of the episodes, this was so powerful, was an interview with this, it was a black female detective from San Francisco. I forget her name. And in the show, they said she had been part of a cult. They didn't actually say on the show that it was Jonestown. She was a member of the People's Temple. And in the show, she talks about how important it is for a police force that has a high control group, whether you want to use the word cult, whether you want to use the word high control group. When you have a high control group operating in your city, you have to understand the unique aspects of a high control group and how they operate and what their policies are. The fact that police tend not to understand exactly what Scientology is why when officers went to check on Shelley Miscavige, they did not understand how important it was to speak to her alone instead of speaking to her in front of the people who are they're responsible for her. Right? And I think if the Clearwater PD has made a mistake, it was removing the educational component that existed to educate its officers on what exactly Scientology is.
Now I'm going to say this in defense of Chief Slaughter.
Okay.
I believe that education component was actually stopped before he became chief.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that.
Okay.
But this is what Ray had said years earlier, that they no longer were training the young officers joining the force on what Scientology does.
Fair point then.
I don't know that for sure. I made a mistake. Tony Ortega had asked me I had heard that back in 2000, Chief Slaughter, as a young officer, was kind of coordinating all the off-duty officers when they were working for Scientology in 2000, 2001. And as I had heard that secondhand from somebody. And I know the chief was not happy about that story. And I later saw the chief, and I apologize for passing that along, because he was adamant that he wasn't. He was one of the officers who worked off-duty.
Right.
His name is listed in the video crawl at the end of my short film. But I don't believe he was in charge of that. But I can understand why he and the department would be very upset about this. It's not a good look.
Yeah.
But again, it's a fine example of how Scientology uses whatever they can to get their way.
Yeah. I feel comfortable making this statement that if the Aftermath show, the 2 episodes where the Clearwater PD did not come off looking very good, if I had to pick one of the best outcomes of that episode, I think there's no question in the minds of any of those officers that the church uses them as pawns in their game against the community.
Sure.
And I think they really do get that. Do you think they get that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most people in the city are aware of that. Most people in the government here are aware of that. You know, it's just nice to see somebody have a backbone.
Yes.
It would have been nice up until the day before we shot the interviews for Leah's two-parter on Clearwater. We did have a representative of the city who was planning to be part of our little discussion.
Yeah.
And it would have been so smart for Clearwater to have somebody explaining their side of this.
Yeah.
And I wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
In fact, I tried, I was suggesting...
Can we say her name?
You can.
Well, she was a city council person at that time. She stepped down. Doreen Caudell had agreed to appear on the Aftermath show as a part of the roundtable. And just to be clear, she didn't agree to appear on the show to talk smack about Scientology. She agreed to appear on the show to represent the city of Clearwater. And then her lawyers ended up telling her bad idea. And I'm just so sick of people being giant cowards on this subject.
Right.
You know, because it's not justified. It's not necessary.
Yeah, and I felt that it really would have been important for the city to have a voice on the show.
Yeah.
Taking the city side, explaining things like this.
Yeah.
So, you know, it shouldn't have to be up to us to do it. You know, I even tried to track down Wayne Sheeler, who was the police spokesperson during the time of the LMT in 2000, 2001. And for years had been the working for the police. Before that, he was a journalist at the Clearwater Sun and knew very well how Scientology acted. And I thought now that he's retired from that, it might be possible for him to share some experiences and defend the police the way we're defending the police.
It's true. We are here defending the police.
But no, I couldn't get in touch with him. I even went to his house, and I even if I had, I think there still would have been a reluctance to go on camera.
Yeah. I'll tell you another little interesting anecdote here. You know, I put up a video on my channel not that long ago talking about Frank Hibbert and how Frank Hibbert, I think, is a man who has a lot of guts and is not afraid of Scientology, right? Frank was invited to appear on the show, and Frank declined, not because he was afraid. Frank had a very specific reason. He said, look, I don't really appreciate all of these things that contribute to the idea that Scientology runs this town or owns this town, and I'm not interested in contributing to a show that is going to create the impression that Scientology runs this town or owns this town because it's bullshit. And my response to that is, Frank, it's a good point. It's true. Look, what people don't know about Clearwater, because if you haven't been here, you don't know anything about this city. Our downtown is like 1% of the economic activity of the city of Clearwater, because we have our downtown section and then we have our beach. And our beach is what we're known for. Our beach is where the tourists come. That's where all the money is generated. So even though Scientology dominates downtown and it sucks and we don't like it and we'd like to change it, the truth is when you're the mayor of this town, or you're a former mayor or you're a possible future mayor, it should drive you crazy when you hear people saying that Scientology owns this town, because they don't. But my response is, Frank, come on the show and say something like that. Avoiding it doesn't help people understand that. People have more than one reason for not wanting to be on this show. And I think running away from it never solves it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because when you're not there, that's when all the conspiracy theories pop up on the internet.
That's right. And I think what happens is also sometimes it's just not possible to explain your entire position or your entire point of view without having a long form platform. It can take 1 to 3 hours to make yourself fully understood.
Yeah.
And the truth is, when these episodes of the Aftermath show, they do take hours and hours and hours of interview, and they have to edit it down to like 38 minutes of content or something like that. So I don't know that Frank would have been able to make his whole position known. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So who knows if he made the right or wrong call there, honestly. You just never really know.
Well, I think you pretty much expressed that thought within just a couple of minutes.
Good point.
So the show probably could have done that too.
That's true. And but here's the other thing, actually. It's so easy to also be misunderstood. And here's what I mean by that. When you hear the mayor, or if you hear Frank say something like what I just said, on the one hand, it's a perfectly true statement. On the other hand, it sounds like you're giving a justification for why you don't have a problem with what Scientology has done to downtown Clearwater. And so it's sort of a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. On the one hand, you're trying to tell everyone that, look, Scientology doesn't own this town, and you want to explain why. But on the other hand, it sounds like you're saying, and therefore we don't really have an incentive to try to put a stop to what they've done, which is turn the downtown into a ghost town. And so, anyway, I'm kind of making excuses that don't need to be made right now. But, it's a tricky situation, and people navigate it different ways.
True. Is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
I'm sure I can think of something, but, we've got a lot more restaurants downtown that we need to eat and chat at. And hopefully we can maybe do this a weekly thing or something.
That'd be good.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. I had a lot of fun.
Me too.
So we'll see you next time.
Come down to pour yours.
Dining with the SBs.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe